like rice. Tell me, Michael, how could a billion Chinese people be wrong?
Welcome to Popped, where you can learn about and relive some of the best that entertainment has to offer. We'll revisit some of our favorite films that helped influence and shape our lives. Now sit back, strap in, and keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times. And if you have to, take a shot of whiskey to keep from swooning when you hear their voices. Here are your hosts,
Daniel, Ben, and Tanya.
In 1985, Warner Brothers Studios released the horror comedy film The Lost Boys to theaters. It opened at number 2 with a domestic gross of $5.2 million. It went on to gross a domestic total of over $32.2 million against an $8.5 million budget.
Most critics liked it, but some were not kind. Among those, Roger Ebert rhetorically asked, "Has there been an action thriller all year in which the last 20 minutes weren't phoned in from the depository of bankrupt cliches?" Karen James of the New York Times called Diane Wiest's character a dopey mom, and Barnard Hughes' character a caricature of feisty old grandpa.
The film was shot in the picturesque town of Santa Cruz in Northern California. Its story follows two teenage brothers, Michael and Sam Emerson, and their recently divorced mother, Lucy, who moved to the fictional town of Santa Carla, the murder capital of the world.
Younger brother Sam, played by Corey Haim, immediately befriends the Frog Brothers, two paramilitary Rambo-influenced teenagers who work in their hippie parents' comic book shop. They give Sam a warning in the form of a comic book about vampires and offering their services if any staking is needed.
Sam finds their warning humorous, but quickly learns through the folly of his older brother that Santa Carla indeed belongs to a den of dangerous, if not fashionable, vampires who feed on the locals at night by the boardwalk.
Older brother Michael falls for a gorgeous young girl named Star, much like most of the teenagers that year, who just so happens to be part of the town's vampire clan. Michael's desire for her drags him into the underworld of David and the other Lost Boys, who work to deceive him and make him one of their own.
The film is full of intentionally campy action sequences, unforgettable one-liners, beautifully shot cinematography, and epic music.
Like many films we have reviewed on this podcast, The Lost Boys did even better on home video than it did in theaters, becoming a cult phenomenon and leading to the cultural shift in the tone of vampire films having younger and more sexy vampires than was previously the case.
The Lost Boys inspired future bloodsucker films like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement's vampire mockumentary, What We Do in the Shadows.
The Lost Boys soundtrack reflects a time when MTV and music videos were at the forefront of American pop culture, with songs by Echo and the Bunnymen, In Excess, Lou Gramm, Jimmy Barnes, and the muscular, shirtless, saxophone-playing Tim Capello.
As of 2024, sadly, the film has lost cast members including Barnard Hughes, Edward Herman, Brooke McCarter, and the young and often troubled child star Corey Haim, who we lost at the young age of 38 in March of 2010.
Welcome to Popped, where we take you to the murder capital of the world. I'm Daniel Hendricks, the founder and co-host of Popped. Joining me are my two co-hosts, Ben Wilson and Tanya Holstrom. We do
Hi,
have
guys.
Oh, hey, there you go. We do have a special guest with us tonight that you may remember from our Sherlock Holmes episodes, Sherlock Holmes with an S. And her name is Susan Aubrey Wilde. She's my mother. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yay.
Yay, Mom.
Hello, Daniel, Tanya, Ben.
Hi,
Happy to be here.
everybody.
It's good to have you back, Mom. We'd been meaning to do this a lot earlier.
Now we get to talk about, vampires and people dying and murder. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah. So let's talk about, well, let's see. Let's tell people a little bit about what's going on with this, and we'll go into the film The Lost Boys. We are going to be doing Patreon content again really soon here. Our next upcoming video is going to be for St. Patrick's Day. It's going to be our favorite Irish films. So it'll be a top 5 episode, a bonus top 5 episode. We haven't done one of those in a while.
We've never done a bonus top 5. I think that's pretty cool. I'm excited.
All right.
I mean, for Patreon. That's what I meant.
Oh,
for Patreon.
I didn't think we were doing that for Patreon. I thought we were just doing that for our regular show. We still haven't.
God, you're right.
We still haven't really figured out.
I've had a hard day, Daniel.
We still haven't actually figured out what we're doing for Patreon yet. We have to all watch something that we can do together. Although, didn't we come up with some things?
We did. I think we did Top Gun Maverick, I think is what we decided
that's right.
on.
We're going to do Top Gun Maverick for Patreon. So if you want to hear our thoughts on that, support us on Patreon. We already do have some supporters there that will get it for free and right away. If not, we'll eventually put it on YouTube, but way down the line. So you don't want to miss out. Got to get in there. Just saying. But yeah, it's nice to be back again, up and running, and see these people's lovely faces. And yeah, let's get on. And don't forget, like, share, subscribe. I know everybody says this on every YouTube video, and for those of you on audio, please make sure that you rate us or send us messages, and do everything you can to help us keep this podcast going, because we really do appreciate it. And with that said, The Lost Boys. So the premise of The Lost Boys, we've got 2 teenage boys moving with their mom to Santa Carla, and they end up finding out that it's a haven for vampires. Now, my history with this film was that I saw it in the theater, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great film, a little goofy, but that's part of its charm. And it certainly changed the whole dynamic, the whole feel of vampire films. I'm curious with what your history is with it, and what you initially thought of Lost Boys. Ben, why don't we start with you?
I have a fun bit of history. I was working in the theater when Lost Boys released. And
was it the theater or the theater?
The movie theater.
Aha.
I did not have a sufficiently snooty accent to work in the other kind of theater. And so I got to see it a lot. And especially certain portions of it I got to see over and over and over again, because those of us who would go in and clean out the auditorium, we would sneak in a few minutes early to watch the end of the films. And this movie, I had enough fun with it that I kept going back on my days off to watch it for free again and again.
That's awesome. Wow, working the movie theater at that time, perfect.
Yeah. Yep, yeah. That was a happy timing.
Tanya, what is your history with The Lost Boys, and what were your initial thoughts about it?
Wow, it's a long story, guys. So this movie probably was one of the most influential movies of my entire adolescence life. I probably saw it like 10 times in the theater, and became obsessed with vampires from that point on. It is an obsession that has really never died, although it's, now that I'm older, it's not quite as intense as it was when I was a teenager. But yeah, and Star was my fashion icon. I think I still get a lot of like my boho-y weirdness from her. My parents let me decorate my room, and so it was dark navy blue, and my friends came over and painted poetry on the walls, and I had Christmas lights and fabric hanging from the ceilings because it was like the vampires and the Lost Boys. Nice. Yeah, I just love this movie, and I actually hadn't seen it in probably a good 10 years, and I just watched it for our video again after not having seen it in forever, and it still holds up, and it's still great and just as good and fun as I remember. So I was really happy about that.
You need that Jim Morrison poster behind you right now. Just saying.
But yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Mom, I'm going to call you Mom instead of Susan on here. They can call you Susan if they want, or you can call her Mom too if you want. I'm sure she's okay with that.
I would love to call her Mom.
Can we
What
call her
Whatever
Rex?
works.
What is your history with this film, Mom? I know you're a big fan. It's one of the reasons I had you on the show. What did you think of The Lost Boys?
No, I don't even remember the first time I saw it, but I've seen it numerous times, to say the least. I just absolutely adore it. I was so surprised at when I first saw it, because it was one of the first vampire films I had ever seen that could incorporate horror, and I mean it got scary sometimes, and humor and music and fabulous photography, and it was great on all fronts. I loved every absolute second of it, and so I have seen it, as I said, numerous times throughout my life, and loved it every time.
All right. Well, I guess that's a good lead into this, because if you didn't like it, well, that would be interesting at the end of this episode. So for The Lost Boys, I think it's extremely well acted. I don't think there's a bad actor in the cast, but there's also great characters in this film. And I'm curious what your favorite characters are. Mom, since we stop with you, why don't you go ahead and take this back over, and we're kind of do a reverse round robin. What is your favorite character in The Lost Boys?
Oh wow, I think the Frog Brothers are my favorite, because they were just so funny, and they're so well developed and so excellently portrayed.
Yeah.
But of course, Kiefer Sutherland and the boys, the vampire boys, were all gorgeous and so much fun. I don't know, but I have to say the Frog Brothers.
You know, it's interesting that the Frog Brothers, when they initially were given the scripts, they were told to. And Corey Feldman said this in an interview, that the director had told him, "Look, I want you to watch Rambo and all these like war films, and you think you're a Marine, right? You think you're a Marine, and I want you to act this out as seriously as possible." So, he didn't realize this was a comedy and that what they were doing was funny until he watched the film. So they are playing it straight in this movie.
Gosh, that's great. I did not know that.
Yeah. Tanya, tell us who your favorite character is in this film.
Mine is a toss-up. Definitely, I have to echo the Frog Brothers, because they were the perfect quirk insert into the characters of this film, even though everyone had their own little essence of weirdo, which is I think why the movie works so well, because it embraced weirdo like on every level. But the Frog Brothers and David, because especially if you compare him to his other vampire brethren, he was the more measured, more controlled version, as opposed to like, dude, let's party like Beavis and Butthead, like it had like they were such polar opposites even though they were all the same group, and I'm sure that was probably an intentional thing on their part, but David and the Frog Brothers for sure.
Excellent. All right, well, that brings us to Ben.
As it happens, I am echoing almost exactly what Tanya just said. The Frog Brothers and David. David, because he is the one who is, I don't know, maybe expectedly, maybe unexpectedly, but he's the mature ringleader among a bunch of wild Lost Boys. And the Frog Brothers, for me as a kid, they were a lesson to the world that vampire stories and vampire movies could honor the genre without necessarily paying reverence to the traditions that came before. This could be a vampire movie that was silly as all get out.
Okay, yeah.
And it was utterly delightful. It still is utterly delightful.
Yeah, absolutely agree. But my favorite characters, they've probably changed over time. I'm a big fan of Grandpa. I just feel like his moments in the film are always the moments that make me stop and laugh, or that makes me stop and look at this film a different way. I also, and sorry babe, but I loved Star, and I think it was because I was a 13-year-old boy and she was super hot, so there was that. But yeah, and David as well, because of his presence. David's presence, I think if you watch this film and you realize how few lines he actually has in this film, and you realize how memorable he is rather remarkable.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I think that's true. Well, even his physicality, there's the moment where they're on the bridge, holding on with all the railroad tracks, and all of the other three of the clan kind of just drop in like, yeah, and like he lets go so intentionally and his hands go down. Like that visual moment is so strong. Like he has this really incredible, well, I mean, obviously it's Kiefer Sutherland. He has this incredible on-screen presence regardless of what he does. So
Yes.
yeah, but it is definitely noticeable.
You know, you bring up that moment, and that moment was so pivotal watching this film the first time, because there is that genuine sense of danger, and when they drop and you're looking at Michael hanging there going, wait, he isn't a vampire yet. What happens if he drops? You know, there's an actual sense that, you know, he could get hurt. So I remember that really being something that I thought about when I was watching the movie the first time. And that the bridge that they're hanging from. Now, I believe that most of this film was shot in Santa Cruz. I'd say over 95% of it. That bridge is actually in Santa Clarita near Magic Mountain. And to this day, you can actually go down there and go into Stevenson's Ranch and walk this trail, and you will get to that bridge.
Neat.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I wonder if like young hooligans have tried hanging off the bottom of it.
I'm sure they did, and it's been boarded.
Probably.
It's been boarded over and covered up with chicken wire and stuff to prevent people from doing that. It's
That's
not that
probably wise.
It's not that far of a drop down, which is interesting because in the film it looks like it's so far, but that they have all that fog in there, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. John Carpenter wants his fog back. But anyway, let's see. There's some cool things and little motifs in this film. One of the things that really stuck out to me, especially on this last viewing, was how many damn trash cans they had set on fire on the beach and in the vampire cave. I mean, it's like, you guys like to burn trash. Did any of you notice that?
I didn't. I almost feel like I need to rewatch and look for burning trash cans, and we could like do a burning trash can count.
Oh my God, that's a
cool.
great idea. We need a burning trash can count for Lost Boys. Oh my God. Well, there's one other moment that happens in the beach early on, and we've referenced it in our past episodes. And I just have to go with shirtless saxophone playing dude. You know, pretty much any other film, nothing. Lost Boys, we need a shirtless saxophone playing dude on the beach, and everybody's getting down and enjoying this stuff. Tim Capello, man, he still does conventions today, and I would imagine it wouldn't be terribly difficult to get him on a podcast. He seems to be very much about this character and talking to fans and audiences. You guys, what was your impression of that beach scene? I really want to know. Anybody can speak up.
I thought that was the sexiest, most gorgeous thing I'd seen in a long time. That guy was hot, and it was so well done. And just again, the photography was so good. The way it would, bounce back and forth between that and how it related to the crowd. But it's so marvelous. And I saw on my video, I have the special information, for the background, and they talk about the fact that he still does that.
He sure
still
does.
the oiled up thing. And he was just, his voice was great. The music was good. The song was great. I love the song. I mean, regardless. But that was such a scene. How can you think of Lost Boys and not think of that scene?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, before we started rolling, we were talking about the fact that the song is a cover from the band The Call, and it's a fabulous cover. It's almost better, I think, than the original. I don't know what you guys think, but I think what we'll do here as well is, for people who are interested, I'll put Tim Capello's information down here somewhere, his Facebook page and whatnot. So if you want to follow Tim Capello, you can do that. Let's see here. Let's see, the script.
Oh, before we go on to that, I totally want to mention something about the beach scene because it was so iconic.
Please do.
And when I watched it as a younger person, I was in the 80s and we were all living the 80s, you know? So I didn't really have the long view now, you know, as an aging Gen Xer that I did then. But what struck me on this last viewing was, and I've said this before, just the compilation of weirdos. And you had like the gothy people, the punky people, the hippie people, like all the different types of weird nonconformists people that existed around that time, and they were all just jamming together and being happy. And I felt like that was a really good, yes, it was like a really good metaphor for the 80s, because that's sort of what it was like. Like,
and not a cell phone in sight.
Oh man, can we just go back to those days? Really? And as Ben would say, that makes me a curmudgeon. But yes, I kind of like, you know, let's talk.
Those days seem better in retrospect than they actually were. You know. Ben, any thoughts before we move on here?
Interestingly, my thoughts on the beach scene are a little bit counter, but not terribly so. When I watched the movie as a kid, I was already aware it was a movie about vampires, and I was just impatient. I wanted to see the vampires doing stuff, and here was an MTV music video.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not into MTV. I was one of the dorks who didn't really get pop culture of my youth when I was youth. So, and as we all know, that was a long time ago.
You hit the nail on the head, though. It absolutely was in the height of videos and MTV pop culture. That's absolutely true, and this film very much reflects that. I mean, you get this, the whole film opens up with Echo and the Bunnymen's "People Are Strange," you know, cover of the Doors, but it's brilliant, and you get maybe you don't get the whole song, but you get most of it, and you get all the montages of all the weirdos in Santa Carla, and it definitely has those moments in it. And you're right, although, you know, for me, I was heavily into the whole pop culture MTV thing, so it's funny that we both are looking at it and we have complete opposite like stance on it, but we can accept that, you know, that's where we came from.
Yeah. And interestingly, my take on that scene has evolved. I still don't really get into the music video of it, but I can pick out more readily than I could when I was a kid the unspoken lines that are going on with regard to Michael noticing Star and beginning to breathe really heavy, and Star noticing Michael and displaying a conflict of thoughts going on in her head, and of course poor Sammy at the mercy of Michael's hormones.
His sex glands.
Yes, his sex glands.
Really weird line. Really weird line. Yeah, so this whole film was based around the idea, and I know that there was initially a book that was a sort of what if. What if Peter Pan had been a vampire, and that's how he stayed young forever? And that's what the initial book was. And according to the director and everybody else at the time, the script was very poorly written, and they had to do rewrites on it. And the writers who got hold of the script decided that they wanted to make everybody in their late teens or early to late teens. And I mean, if you think about it, some of the things still held over.
You'll never grow old, Michael, and you'll never die.
So, good stuff. What else? What other things did you guys pull out of this film that stick out to you, that sort of have that Peter Pan-esque vibe to it, or did that not occur to you? Tanya, what do you think?
It did occur to me. I think nothing really in terms of like Peter Pan-y type situation, but I think one of the lines that kind of sets the movie is when we first see Lucy, and I think that's a very interesting name choice for obvious reasons.
Right.
But when she goes into the video store for the first time and she says, "Oh, this little boy is lost. I'm wondering if his mother is in here." Like, that's the movie in that little moment, you know. That's kind of the giveaway for everything that's about to unfold. But
Right.
Yeah.
I find the Diane Weiss character really interesting. She reminds me so much of somebody I knew growing up at that time. In fact, that person's here with us right now. I mean, literally, if they could have carbon copied Diane Weiss' character from my mom, they were almost the same person. I don't know, Mom, how do you feel about that? Do you see that resemblance?
When I first saw the films a few times, I don't know that I drew that specifically. I saw some similarities, but after this last time I saw it, I just started laughing. I thought, oh no, oh my God, that is so mean.
Mm-hmm.
I understood why several people have made mention of that fact, and I'm like, oh dear.
Yeah.
I am the hopelessly always trying to make everything okay person.
Yeah, even the way she tried to discipline the kids and sort of seemed a little bit behind their shenanigans. Very, very familiar.
Well, even in the store when she met the head vampire and the other vampires came in and he was throwing them out, she goes, "They're just young," you know. She was like, "Oh, we were that age too," you know. She's always making these, you know, excuses, not just excuses, but trying to bolster everybody up and make everybody okay. It was kind of, I got that.
She definitely was kind of a head in her clouds kind of person. I really enjoyed her, but yeah, to Tanya's point, the choice of naming her Lucy, I mean, if you're a fan of the original Bram Stoker's Dracula, that is an interesting choice. So, little things that stick out. The missing posters all over the place. I really thought that was a nice touch. Laddie on the milk carton. Any other things stick out to you guys?
In terms of just odd things that they showed, it would also be clues or what?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have well, here's something. This is actually from our trivia bit, but in Max's video store, if you look behind Lucy when she's in there for the first time, just to the right of her is a advertisement for the Goonies, and one of the Goonies cast members is in this film. So I found that really cool. Did anybody else catch things like that?
Wow.
I didn't catch that. One thing that I remember noticing even when I was a kid, and it only stood out to me even more this time, was when they got settled-ish into Grandpa's house, and the mom Lucy goes to say goodnight to Sammy, and she forgets to close the closet door, and says, "Mom," and looks at the door, and she says very, very sweetly and almost apologetically as she's closing the closet door, "Oh yeah, I know this is a terrible thing to say, but I think one of the reasons I divorced your father was because he never believed in the closet monster." And on the one hand, I found that enormously cute, and that's one line from the movie that has stuck with me all the years since. When I was a kid, it struck me, wait, that can be a reason for someone to get a divorce? I need to rethink some things. And also at the same time, it also feels to me like that was the writers saying, yes, for sure, there's going to be a closet monster coming pretty soon. So it wasn't quite a Goonies advertisement, but that's one of the things that has always stood out to me in this movie.
Speaking of lines, this film is chock full of lines. That's a line that stood out to you quite a bit. I'll tell you guys my line that has always stood out to me, and it's got to be, "You don't like rice, Michael? Tell me, how could a billion Chinese people be wrong?" That's kind of, I love that line, even though today that might be a little racist.
Did you just say racist?
Dun.
Did.
Okay.
So, Tanya, do you have a favorite line from this film?
Oh my God, there are so many amazing lines in this film. I think one that always struck me funny, and that's the thing that I love about this movie, and I think multiple people have already said this in our little conversation, but just how funny a horror film could be. There are so many things that made me guffaw, but the Frog Brothers, after they stake Marco and they're coming out of the cave and they're all upset and they say, "Oh, well, was it? They pulled a mind scrabble on us. They opened their eyes and talked." Like just little moments like that, I just think were so pricelessly perfect. God.
That's
and there's a
good
million. And then, and like you said before, every one of Grandpa's lines was almost comedic.
Pretty much, yeah. So even Sam conniving him into putting on Windex for aftershave, so he could go date the widow. I mean, just moments. There's so many good moments in this film like that. Mom, did you have something that stuck out for you, a line that really connected with you?
More than a few, but I was just thinking about when Sam was encountering his brother as a vampire, and he's calling him, "Oh, Michael, you're a blood-sucking vampire. Just wait till I tell Mom." My own brother, a blood-sucking vampire.
Yeah, kind of almost the exact quote.
My own brother, a goddamn shit-sucking vampire. Will you wait till Mom finds out, buddy?
Yeah, almost enough like.
The sanitized version.
Yes. Yeah. We were considering that for a title, right? The problem is we'd have to water the title down. So, we'll figure out a title. We'll all come to a consensus here.
Regarding the one-liners and how many of them there are, it hit me. It's funny, it never hit me before just now, but that's one of the things that makes this movie not just a very fun, memorable vampire movie, but a very, very 80s movie, is that it is just chock full of one-liners.
Yeah.
And it almost reminds me of an Arnie film.
Absolutely. Arnie, Sylvester Stallone, all those films were big at that time. And one-liners were part and parcel to action films.
It's kind of a signature of the 80s.
Sure is.
They're so great. Maybe that's why I love them so much. I never tire. I never tire of a good one-liner.
But I think is very, very funny about that is that Joel Schumacher in an interview said that because of the comedy involved, he was actually taken aside by the investors before this was made, or during the time it was made. They're going, "Oh, this isn't going to fly. It's not going to happen," blah, blah, blah. And he said, Afterwards, when it was such a smash, he says, "You've never seen so many happy investors." And it was. I mean, the way they would blend the humor and the horror. This last time I just saw it, I was shocked at how horrible some of it was, because I didn't remember that. I was remembering more of the, funny stuff. And then when I really saw some of the horror scenes, they were really scary. And I just think they made this beautiful transition from one to the other that was absolutely flawless.
Yeah, there's some low-key genius moments in this film when it comes to the vampire attacks. Do you realize how much money they probably saved by just using the camera as the vampire? Flying in on people and attacking them and flying back out again.
Yeah.
That's genius. Talk about keeping yourself under budget,
It's a very good point. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah.
Yeah, that's something I noticed on this last watch that I never really thought about before, was we never see who these people are attacking. We don't see it until the beach scene, where we actually see them vamp out and attack that group. And I just think it's cool that they kept the mystery by doing it from the point of view of the vampire. To me, that might even be low-key genius. That might just be genius.
Yeah, it was very well done.
One of
Something
the
else.
things I really liked. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Please go ahead.
One of the things that I really liked, I told you I love the photography. Michael Chapman, the director of photography, was very, in an interview that I saw with him, was very modest about his abilities. But what you're just talking about, the way he used the camera and the way he just zoomed in on certain things and aspects that just made you feel that moment, whether it was comedic or horror or flying or whatever, it was absolutely beautiful.
I love that this film can be dark, but you still see what you need to see. You don't have to struggle in the darkness to figure out what you're looking for. And the light and the darkness in this film is used with such skill. In the house, when it's dark so you can't see for a reason. It's not just dark because they don't know how to light. When Michael's standing off in the shadow in the darkness, when Sam comes out of the bathroom, freaking awesome. So many cool things like that. I don't know. Was there anything else cinematography wise that stuck out to you guys?
The scene where they're motorcycle racing on the cliff. And the way that was shot with the fog and you can't tell where the edge is. I felt like that was just a really beautifully shot scene.
I find it interesting that they were all able to stop when they, right before the edge. They were going pretty fast. I don't know.
They were vampires, Daniel. Jeez.
Hey, Hollywood physics are perfectly legitimate. I have it on good authority by my friends who totally believe in the WWE.
You got me there. I concede. So something else that I found interesting was how all of Max's interaction with the Lost Boys happened off screen. Now, we had them walk into his shop, but you don't get the sense that they know each other. And you see them harass him at one point where they show up, but I feel like that's a red herring. And I felt like there were a couple of red herrings in this film. But that was definitely one of them. But I always found it interesting that whatever Max had been telling them, they had the good sense not to show us, because that would totally destroy that reveal in the end, which I think is a really good reveal. I mean, we're all pretty sure it's Max, but I remember when he turned around and the first time I watched that film and vamped out, and Max, he looked creepy. So that was a good switch around there. There was another red herring early on. So you have that couple who steal the comic books, right, from the comic book shop, and not long after, and I mean maybe the next scene or two, the vampires fly down to the car, rip the roof off of the car, and right back in again to kill them. Of course, they're doing some really over the top death acting there. But the red herring for me is it was stolen from the comic book shop. And is it just coincidence that vampires chose them to kill? Because it almost makes you think maybe the Frog Brothers are coming after them. You know, why warn a kid about vampires if you are? But still, it was one of those things that, is it meant to make us think that? Oh, thoughts?
I don't know. My mind never went there. I think because I always just referenced the initial carousel scene, like the security guard was first on their list, and the couple that started the instigation was the second. So I never considered the Frog Brothers as
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because we were talking about in the intro, our little intro script, we were talking about how this film influenced a lot of other films like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and What We Do in the Shadows. But another one I feel like it influenced, even though it's a direct like sequel to, say, Dracula, would be Renfield. I don't know if you guys have seen Renfield, but Renfield has this over-the-top violence with humor running through it, and it's a vampire film, obviously. So if you get a chance, take a look at Renfield. It's sort of, you'll see some similarities, just an idea, just a thought, guys. Cool. And then if we've all seen it, we can review it.
Is that a hint? Maybe a subtle one?
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Hey, I see what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
To you.
That's right. So anyway, anybody have anything they just want to throw out there? Because I prepared for this, but I didn't over prepare for this.
Pause it. I have a question. So there is a moment. Well, it's set up that Max wants Lucy, and his goal to get Lucy is to get Michael and Sam into his family. Mm-hmm. But at one point, Star says to Michael, David wanted you to be my first, which meant first kill. So is David low-key plotting behind Max's back because he does not want a mama figure in his life?
That's a good point. My question is, though, is because David wanted that in the beginning, but did Max approach him after that point and say, hey, don't kill him? We don't know this. And it's a good question, because it is, if you think about it, it's kind of a little plot hole. We don't know. And it does sound weird that she said, well, he wanted me to be your first, but then we find out later that Head Vampire Max is trying to start his own little blood-sucking Brady Bunch. Right? I mean, I think that's a really astute awareness of what was happening there, because it is something that did cross my mind, but for like 2 seconds before we got to the next scene.
See, it's funny. I had the thought that those things could be possible, but in the end, I simply decided it was probably a rewrite that someone didn't catch.
It's possible,
but I could also be wrong. It could have been intentional, and it was intended to show this, that, or the other thing.
You never know, because with films you get rewrites, but you also they're also shot out of sequence, right?
Yeah.
Nothing is ever very few films are shot from first shot to last shot in order. You basically go by location, and you do everything that's going to happen at that location at one time. And this film was shot in a very short span of time. I was actually kind of shocked. It was like, I want to say it was a couple of weeks of filming.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, and I'd have to go back and completely, verify that. And I'll probably put down the actual time down here on the bottom of the screen somewhere when I'm editing this, because just because I remember it one way doesn't necessarily mean that's true. But yeah, aging Gen X. So anybody else got something they want to bring up about this film before we go into our segments?
This kid here, he was one of the Lost Boys. He was one of the vampires in the Lost Boys. Each and every one of my friends that I was hanging out with told me I was A, wrong, and B, just expletive crazy.
Was it Marco in Bill and Ted?
I'm gonna say, yeah, I couldn't remember the character's name, but yeah, Alex Winter.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Winter was a vampire. And Bill and Ted came out, and I kept saying to my friends, that's one of the Lost Boys. They said, no, quit being stupid. Well, now I get to shout it out into the ether. Y'all can bite me, you were wrong.
Shake your fist at the sky, Ben.
Damn you!
Oh my God. You know, it's interesting too, because there's another thing. Did anybody here watch the Gilmore Girls?
I caught a few episodes. I don't remember it very well.
It was kind of a quick, talky, intelligent Northeastern comedy with Lorelai Gilmore and whatnot. She ran an inn, and she had a really intelligent daughter, and it was just a quick banter, fast dialogue show that took me a little while, and then I finally really started to like it. But her grandfather in that show was played by Edward Herrmann, who is Max, the head vampire. And I always found that really cool, because I remember watching it. I'm like, God, I know this guy. Oh God, I hope he has fangs, but never happened.
That would totally change the whole trajectory of that show.
It certainly would.
Grandpa, why do you only ever come over at nighttime? I don't know. Are you gonna invite me in? Yeah. So yeah. All right. Let's see. Is there some things that I did write down here? Something else that I did notice was that I found was kind of maybe a plot hole or an oversight on their part. Max, when he comes over that night, gets Michael to invite him into the house, right? And the other vampires obviously don't come into the house. Even when they swarm around the house with their motorcycles, they actually disappear when he opens the door. But Star comes in without an invitation. She just flies up and into the window. Now, she's not a full vampire, but I just kind of found that was interesting. You know, did somebody not think about that, or did they go, she's a half vampire, she can come in?
I just figured that they had decided that she was not subject to that rule yet, because she had not yet made her first kill.
That makes sense. It does. I mean, I just thought it was interesting. And again, those are little things that happen and pop in my mind as I'm watching films like this, especially when I'm trying to look at it with a much more critical eye than I normally do when I just view a film. You know, oh, we've got to review this. What things are jumping out to me right now? That was one of those things. So,
I saw that. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
When I saw that, my first instinct was that her passion for Michael overrode her common sense, and she just burst through regardless.
It's a good thing she
really
didn't catch
doesn't.
fire. Whew. Put some salt on it. You'll be good. I hear you winding up. What's going on?
Yes, I did wind up. I can let it wait until a different segment.
All right. So let's move on to some other segments here.
I know that, dude.
Grandpa, Barnard Aloycious Hughes. That's his real name.
What a great name.
Isn't it great? What a great character too. I mean, the taxidermy, his own little shelf in the refrigerator, because he's that kind of roommate. The life-saving knowledge at the end of the film, and even playing dead on the front porch, stuff like that. Grandpa was just so much fun, and this guy, he played him so well. It's interesting because if I was looking at his background, and for many years he was a stage actor, and he was quoted as saying, and I've got to pull this over here so I can look at the quote, "I didn't make a lot of money, but I worked all the time. I worked for writers who didn't make money. I worked for directors who didn't make money. There wasn't a basement in New York I didn't work in." This is his recollection of his years in the theater. And he acted most of his life. But interesting guy. I remember him personally. Before I ask you guys where you remember him from, I remember him from the movie Tron. Yes, he was like the MCP, or not the MCP, he was the data guy, I guess. But he was the old guy that is in that thing that looks like he's bent over and yeah, he's in the film. Trust me, he's in there.
Okay, I'll have to rewatch that. It's been forever since I've seen it.
Right, and it wasn't that long ago that I watched it, but I can't remember the name of the character or what it is now because so far from my mind. But that's where I always remember Barnard Hughes from. And then, of course, this. Let's ask you, because I'm going to go around the horn here. And Ben, I'll start with you because I already know your answer to this. Where do you know Barnard Hughes from?
I know Barnard Hughes from The Lost Boys. I could not have called up to memory anything else I had ever seen him in. I did see Tron, didn't realize that Barnard Hughes was in it. But Barnard Hughes in The Lost Boys, he made such an impression that even in the years that I had not yet learned his name, he is absolutely my image of a truly fun, happy grandpa for the movies. And I mean the dead animal stuffing, Windex wearing, it kind of out there, but still does have his faculties, grandpa.
Yeah, absolutely. Tanya, do you have any history with Barnard Hughes? Were you aware of him before this film or after?
What Ben said. I have absolutely nothing else to add. But he was amazing. But yes, what Ben said. That's it.
All right, Mom, save us here.
I actually did a little research on this, and I had seen his face before, and so I was curious. But in films, he was in Midnight Cowboy, The Hospital, Where's Papa, Oh God, Tron, like you said, and Doc Hollywood. Yeah. And he had also television and other recurring roles in The Guiding Light, As the World Turns, All in the Family he was in, The Bob Newhart Show, and Blossom.
Don't forget Dark Shadows.
He also won. Huh?
Don't forget Dark Shadows, which was a vampire soap opera.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My God.
He was, yeah, okay.
From the 70s.
Well, he also won an Emmy for the portrayal of a senile judge on Lou Grant.
That's true. And thank you for reading those, because that means I don't have to. Yeah. So there was a film you missed in there, which would be Sister Act 2. And he was also in The Odd Couple too. I mean, you might have said The Odd Couple, but yeah, I really like the fact that he was in all these soap operas as well. Both of my grandmothers watched one of these soap operas. So my grandmother that I kind of grew up with when I was watching Robotech and all that, the soap opera I had to wait through to get to Robotech was The Guiding Light. And my other grandmother had always watched As the World Turns, and I will always have that music. At some point, I will be doing something, and all of a sudden I hear this, so the music just going around in my head, and it's kind of a curse, blessing and a curse. But let's get some background on Barnard Hughes. I'll let you guys know a little bit about him. He was born in Bedford Hills, New York in 1915. And he died in New York, at 90 years old. It was literally 5 days before his 91st birthday. So he lived a nice, long life. He was the son of Irish immigrants. And yeah, I mean, there isn't a whole lot of other information about him, and I think partially probably because of his age and the fact that he was a more of a bit part character guy. That he only had 3 shows where he was the main character. One was called Doc, the other was the series The Kavanaughs, and then Mr. Merlin, of which he played Merlin. So, and I don't remember any of these series. It's always weird when you get you look up somebody's past as an actor, and you realize how little of the things that they've done that you've seen, and you just realize how many movies and television shows and things have been out there, which really, to me, legitimizes what we do, because we get a chance to talk about this stuff and learn about its existence. And we send that to you, dear listeners and watchers. So here you are. That is our I Know That Dude, Barnard Aloycious Hughes, also known as Grandpa. I was certain there wasn't really much in this film that I could have done without. The more I thought about it, I started to realize there are things I could have done without. Or at least things that I thought that wasn't really well thought through. And the first one I'm going to bring up, and then I'll pass the baton around before I get to the other ones, because I do have a couple of things, believe it or not. The first one is the security guard death.
Could have done without that.
You guys remember this? He's slowly running across the parking lot being chased by vampires. And he gets to the car and tries to open the door without keys. It's locked, of course, but he didn't think to get his keys out, and fumble with them like they do in most horror films. He's just, panicking and holding onto this door. Now, this is my question to you guys. He couldn't open the door on his own, yet when he gets pulled away by the vampires, the entire door comes off instead of his arm. I feel like this is, he's not Superman. How in the hell did his arm not come out of his sockets?
Osmosis.
Hollywood physics is
Vampire
a real
osmosis.
thing.
So when they grabbed him, Tanya, you're saying their vampire powers quickly transferred through his arm and allowed him to pull that car door off with him.
No, I don't actually think that. I am with you on this. That always felt like, even when I was young and watching this, that always felt very strange to me. Didn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense.
All right. Ben, what could you have done without?
I had a couple things. The first and easiest is, as fond as I am of many elements, this movie is also a stark reminder of how embarrassing cringe, not creepy cringe, but embarrassing cringe, many elements of the 80s actually were.
Ben! You're breaking my heart right now.
That seems to be my role in this show.
Because that was also Tanya's, right?
So much of what I remember from the 80s, great, and I love it. There were a few things. There were maybe a hairstyle or two, or a shirt or two that made me think, "Oh God, did my friends and I really do that?"
Are you talking about the fashion victimage of Corey Haim's character?
I am not here to besmirch the dead.
But yes.
For the record, I didn't say it.
Well, that was intentional. They wanted him to have this sort of fashion victim look. So it's okay for you to say that, because it wasn't Corey's choice. It was what they gave him to wear.
Okay. Now, moving on from that, the thing that I had the most, I could have done without that, reaction to from the very beginning, from the first time I watched it, all the way up to including this last rewatch, which was a couple weeks ago. All the darn taxidermified animals.
Could have done without that.
And that's a totally real word, by the way.
Taxiderm-esque.
Nicely done.
It's an inside joke. It's fine.
Now, it's not that I feel that the movie overdid it with them. They were a legitimate part of the story. I think there was enough of them for what the story called for, but not too many. For me, it's just a personal thing that stems from vacation cabins that my family would go to on our summer vacations that invariably had deer heads mounted on the walls, and I couldn't freaking sleep with these not alive, but they look alive, freakish things staring at me, and I was a little kid, and it just terrified the hell out of me. So I just don't like taxidermy critters.
I don't think Sam did either.
I had the exact same reaction. You're out of here, Buster. Throw it in the closet. Close the door.
Oh my.
And then the last thing is a small point. And yes, I know that Grandpa was supposed to be almost like a Judge Stone type of character from Night Court, with regard to how goofy and how not quite in touch he is. But I don't think it'll be too much of a spoiler, because most people listening have probably already seen this movie.
Yeah, that's why we didn't even bother to say that this had spoilers in it. And we figure at this point, the film came out in 1985, folks. If you haven't seen it, and you're watching this,
So at the end of the movie, it was a fun joke. I absolutely understand why the writers put it in. The one thing I never could stomach about Santa Carla, all the damn vampires. This watch through, I thought to myself, you let your daughter and your grandsons move into your house, you knew Santa Carla was crawling with vampires. You didn't warn your family.
Do you know how crazy he would have sounded telling them that? They would have just laughed him off. I mean, come on, okay? Tanya, did you have a could have done without that Ben didn't take?
I just have one. And really, and this is my only one in the entire movie. Like, there's some stuff that I kind of go, oh, but it's still great, and I don't care because I love it. But when they are going to avenge Marco's death and they leave the cave, and you see the vampire, from the vampire point of view, them flying away from the cave, the waves are going backwards because they didn't bother to film actually moving backwards. They just shot forward footage and put it in reverse. That's the only thing in this entire movie, like, from the first time I saw it, that just irritates the crap out of me. The one thing. That's it.
Could have done without that.
I didn't catch it. I catch a lot
Oh my
of this
God.
stuff.
Never caught that
Now
either.
you are
now I
never
have
going
to
to
look
be able
for
to
it.
unsee it now.
I'll never
Ever.
not see it. Oh my lord. That's a good one, Tanya.
That's
Well,
good.
So you only had the one. That leaves Mom. What could you have done with that? Was there anything that happened in the film that you're like, yeah.
Actually, there's nothing that I would have done with that. I really loved that entire film, the way it was done. I do agree with Ben that it did seem a bit remiss of Grandpa not to be a little more forthcoming, but it sort of fit into the plot, so
It also
I could write it off.
it also fit his sort of cryptic sort of personality. So
Right.
I guess there's that. I only had two more I could have done without that, and the first one is Sam. He's in the comic shop and he's upset that he had to leave Phoenix to come live in Santa Carla. Really? Have you ever been to Phoenix? I have. I'll tell you what, there's no way, and I'm not buying it for a minute. You living in an awesome beach community in California where the weather is nice and you want to go back to Phoenix? No. No.
Could have done without that.
Nobody in their right mind would want to go back to Phoenix. So I could have done without that. And the last thing,
Arizona.
nothing wrong with Arizona. I enjoyed being there, but if I had a choice between Santa Cruz and Phoenix, I'm picking Santa Cruz 100 times out of 100. Just saying. So my other I could have done without that. During the vampire fight sequence, where in the hell did all the blood that came out of the pipes in the sink come from? come
That's
on.
part of the vampire magic that happens.
Right?
Yes, it's
Dude
part
died
of
in
vampire osmosis.
Dude died in the tub.
That's right, the vampire
Now-
osmosis.
Dude died in a tub, so apparently it went down through the pipes and whatnot. But my question is this: like, man, he should have been a lot fatter, because that's a lot of blood. Just saying.
And his blood was glittery.
Yes. So
Yeah.
people who get mad at Twilight, and you gotta take a second and realize the blood glittered in Lost Boys.
Could have done without that.
Just saying.
Everyone thinks they're an original, but they just don't know. They have no idea.
Man, did they steal that for Twilight?
I think we can now declare that they did.
Right. Yeah. How about some trivia? And this will make it into the show if we didn't go too long in our discussion there. So I'll go ahead and read some trivia facts for you guys that may or may not blow your mind, or may just completely fizzle out and you just roll your eyes. So the town is supposed to be Santa Carla. They created the city billboard and a huge neon sign that said Santa Carla Boardwalk, right? But if you look close at the license plates on the cars, they all clearly say Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz, where Santa Carla, the fictional town, takes place, was once plagued with the reputation, this is true, of being the murder capital of the world because of a series of very brutal murders by 3 different very disturbed men in the early 70s. Because of John Lindley Frazier, Herbert Mullen, and Ed Kemper, Santa Cruz endured 28 murders over a 30-month period between 1970 and 1973.
Ed Kemper, I remember hearing about.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, he's a big one. And what's that show? There was a show where they were talking about the formation of the serial killer squad in the FBI. Oh, it's brilliant. I can't think of the name right now,
I
but
am also blanking on the name.
it's wonderful. That would actually be a good one for us to cover on our Patreon. So I'll get the name and we can talk about that later. Let's see. Jamie Gertz became the owner of the NBA, National Basketball Association team, the Atlanta Hawks. Interesting.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
She's a very wealthy, very smart businesswoman, and she's had quite an
Good for
interesting
her.
life. The new location of the Atlantis Fantasy World comic book store, which was featured in the film, is owned by Joe Ferrara II, who still carries the original #1 issue of Vampires Everywhere that Sam reads in the film. The comic was created only for the film, and its opening page is signed by all of the cast members of the movie. The owner, Joe Ferrara II, allows any shopper to hold it and take a photo with it free of charge.
Wow, I'm so happy to know that.
I think we have
Oh
a
my
field trip
gosh.
coming in the future. Just saying.
I
That's
like the way you're
amazing.
thinking there. Yes.
Yes. I feel like we need to make him a medal or a little trophy for just being an awesome human. That's
That is-
pretty cool.
That is definitely
Yeah.
awesome human status.
Yeah.
So this was the first Corey Haim and Corey Feldman film together, which marked the start of a popular 1980s trend, the two Coreys, in which Feldman and Haim starred together in a number of teenage films. Every year at the landmark Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk in Santa Cruz, California, this film is screened as part of the park's free summer movie series. Beachgoers may bring outdoor furniture and supplies to watch after sunset. Many features of the town shown could still be recognized, most notably the rides and games on the boardwalk itself. Interesting. Now,
Very
whether or
nice.
not this fact is still true, I'm not sure, because I grabbed this from IMDb trivia, and there seem to be a couple of negative reactions to it, which means maybe they don't do it anymore. I don't know. While both the interior and exterior versions of Grandpa's house were built on the Warner Brothers lot, most of the exterior shots used the old Pogo Nip Clubhouse, once a fancy golf resort. The clubhouse is still standing in the Pogo Nip Open Space Preserve, located at 333 Golf Club Drive in Santa Cruz. So if you want to go see a movie location, you can go there. And remember, you can go see the bridge they all hung from at Stevenson's Ranch near Magic Mountain. So there you have it.
Cool.
So only one thing left to do, guys. Let's get to poppin'. All right. Yeah, listen to that
Are we
music.
doing our disco? Our
The music is going. We're feeling good. We're getting ready to pop.
Yay.
We all ready to pop here?
Oh
I
yeah.
think we're ready to pop.
Mom, since you're our guest, we're going to start with you. How many pops would you give The Lost Boys?
Well, this is no surprise. I'm going to give him 5 pops. I love this movie from start to finish. I love the cast. I love the director. I love the photography. And it's a classic. It's just fabulous.
Excellent.
Oh, and the score. Great music.
The score is a freaking phenomenal score. I have it on CD. I think actually you just even gave me another copy of it the other day. It's definitely worth listening to. Ben, how many pops do you give The Lost Boys?
In spite of the minor complaints that I had, I just enjoy this movie so very much. And it's something that I love to remember. My brother and I still quote many portions of it to each other in situations just in life where the same ideas come up. This one, I'm feeling a little impish. I'm not going to give it any pops, but I give this movie 5 blah blah blahs.
Do not say blah, blah, blah.
I figured I could provoke you into responding that way.
You just know I know the quotes.
It's a 5 from me.
Excellent. Tanya, how many pops do you give The Lost Boys?
It's obviously getting 5 pops from me. Again, just what Susan and Ben have already said. Amazing from start to finish. The acting was great. The music was fantastic. The quirky, it embraced the quirk in such a perfect way. Just so good. And it holds up all these years later. It's still a great film. So kudos to Lost Boys. Here, I'm going to do this is the frog as they're leaving the church.
Oh, yes.
the fist.
Yes, I remember that.
All right.
That's my frog salute to the Lost Boys.
Well, this film is not perfect. And, you know, you don't need to be a perfect film to get a 5 pop rating from us. In fact, you just have to be extremely entertaining, something that I can watch over and over again, quote, and enjoy every single time I watch it. Hat trick, guys. 5 pops.
Nicely done.
Is this the first?
This may be the first one that's gotten 4 sets of 5 pops.
Yeah, with a guest.
Wow. History in the making.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Lost Boys.
I do want to make one more note before we do our little sign off here, is that, you know, rest in peace, Joel Schumacher. You know, we lost him a little bit ago, and what amazing film he's made. He's, you know, remembered for other things that he's done, but for some reason, this is the one that I think people should remember him for. This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, thanks for watching us. We are Popped, and we have a website where you can go and check out our episodes, both audio and video. You can follow a link on Patreon to support us. And I'll tell you what, that inside joke that we did earlier, if you support us on Patreon, we'll tell you what it is. I'm not kidding.
Go find it.
We do a lot of free content for Patreon. We were doing a monthly episode just for them that they get, you know, not for free because obviously they're supporting us, but it's free content that they get, and they get it way before everybody else does. There's also, you get like, I think you get a mug, you get different things that are sent out to you at different intervals, and that the support helped us a lot, because when the computer went down, there had to be a way to pay for some of it, and we thank you. So let's see, what else we got? We have emails there. If you'd like to send us an email, tell us your opinions on things, please comment on this video here on YouTube, or if you can comment on the podcatcher that you're listening to, there's a chance that I'll see it. But you're welcome to comment also on our website. And we really thank you for tuning in and joining us here for the Lost Boys. Tanya, do you have anything else you want to add?
Honestly, I just think I'm too poop to pop.
All right. Well, on that note, I guess we're off. And we're leaving as well.
Pop can be found on most of your favorite social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. If you like what you heard and would like to support the show, hop on over to Patreon and become a member. There you can get access to extra content, including uncut interviews and popped gear. For all other questions or content, check out poppedpodcast.com. Thanks for listening.